Wilson, and this is the Shit Stick of Life podcast. Today, my guest, Maryam Monsef, was an Afghan refugee, moved to Canada. Now, let me just tell you, we are in a shit time in history, if you ask me, and there's a lot going on, and I feel like women need to hear from people like Maryam. She is an inspiration. She has been hit by the shit stick of life. She has survived it, and she is ready to tell her story. So without further ado, my conversation with Maryam Monsef. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much.
I am so glad you agreed to do a podcast with the word shit in it.
Well, you know, there's a lot of shit. And to have a Canada-U.S. conversation these days, it's a good use of time and
Crazy.
the use of the word.
Well, I love you even more before the interview even starts. Okay, so for those of you out there who know who Maryam is already, I want to just say that this podcast airs in so many places. Like you just said, I actually live in the U.S. So when we're talking about your past or history or politics, like I want this to be empowering for people. So I want to, for lack of a better term, dumb it down, even though nobody's dummies out there. I want everybody to really, truly understand the story. And I feel like a lot of women are discouraged by politics and by, what their role is in empowerment these days. So fair?
Let's go.
Let's go. Take me back. Where are you from? Tell me a little bit about your story.
That's probably one of the most complicated questions you can ask an immigrant, especially a refugee. But I was born an Afghan refugee in Iran. And my parents decided to leave Afghanistan early on so that I would be born in a safer place than what that place was at the time.
Only child?
I was followed by two other humans. I am the older sister of three girls.
Okay, so they were born in
Iran as well.
Oh, they were all born in Iran.
And we would have probably, stayed there or moved somewhere to Europe, except my dad was killed when I was very young. So my mom's a 24-year-old widow.
Oh my
in
goodness.
a place that doesn't recognize female heads of households. It's hard for her to find work. There's a lot of uncertainty. She's going to be deported. We're going back and forth between the border of Iran and Afghanistan for long enough for me to start getting marriage proposals at the age of 10.
Later on, I was going to ask you what your motivation was for your career, but it's becoming already very clear.
There's not a single second of any of our lives that is not affected by politics, no matter where you are in the world.
Okay, so your mom at 24 moves to Canada as a refugee.
When my mom was 24, she became a widow, and she tried to make it work. She had siblings who were helpful. She cooked, she cleaned, she did her best. We homeschooled a lot, and I learned a lot from her. And we had a pretty great upbringing, actually. We were poor, but we didn't know it. My sisters and I were spoiled in all the real meaningful ways you can spoil children. Now as a mother, I understand how spoiled we really were. And when I get my first marriage proposal at the age of 10, she realizes she's at a crossroad. She either marries us off because financial security and, just making sure that they're okay, and my daughters are okay, or she has to leave. And that's a bigger risk because she's going to give up her support system. She's going to have to start in a place where she doesn't speak the language. And so she chooses to come to Canada because her brother is here. And so she makes the journey.
Has she ever told you if she considered the proposal for you?
Oh, no.
That was not an option for her.
It was never an option for her. No, my mom was raised by a very progressive man. Her dad wanted her to continue schooling, and she got a lot of proposals, as is the norm. It's not a bad thing. It's just the way it is. She got many proposals as a young woman, and her father protected her, and he wanted her to become the first doctor in the family. And with all that support and with those barriers removed, she actually got a full scholarship to study medicine abroad, and her bags are packed. She said her goodbyes, and then they get word that her brother, who was studying pharmacy in Kabul, had been overheard making anti-communist remarks on a bus. His dormitory's invaded. He's taken, never to be seen or heard from again. And the war now has landed on their doorsteps, and so she's not going anywhere. So her dreams were shattered. She becomes a teacher instead, and then the Taliban come into power. And so, barrier after barrier, this woman overcomes them, and she believed from a very young age that she was going to provide her daughters with the opportunity to stand on their own feet.
Where's your mom now?
She's at home watching my toddler.
I love that. So she's here in Canada.
She's in Canada. Yep. She's a force to be reckoned with.
And all of your siblings are here as well?
Both my sisters are here in Canada. Yeah, I'm very fortunate.
So, I was saying many women feel disconnected from politics because they feel like it doesn't really affect them. And you just said everything is affected by politics.
The water we drink, the food we eat, what our kids are taught, the care that our children and our parents receive at critical stages in their lives, the jobs we have, the money we make or don't make, the decisions that are made about do we go to war, the trade conversations right now that are going to affect our economies and our bank accounts.
So why do you think women respond that way?
I think the reluctance for some women to participate in politics is more about the pushback that we get when we voice our opinions than it is about us not being sure about the relevance of politics. Women run households. The majority of spending happens by women. We get it. In fact, we viscerally get it. Because of politics, women couldn't get a mortgage without the signature of their husband or their fathers. Because of politics, women couldn't vote or put their name on a ballot. So we get it. It's in our DNA.
It's really interesting that you say that because we both have lived somewhat of a public, we're about public figures and we live in the public eye. And even today, every time I go to post something, I actually think about how people are going to respond to it. And I have to make a decision on whether or not I'm equipped to handle it that day.
And that's, you got to protect your peace. And, the pushback that women get, there was pushback when we entered the workforce. There was pushback when we, got the right to vote. There's pushback now as more and more of us are in leadership positions or high profile positions. Yeah, take a look at any one of our Twitter feeds and see for yourself what pushback looks and feels like. So I think if we're not seeing as many women as we'd like to see participating in political processes and in democracy on both sides of our borders in Canada and US, it has a lot more to do with political violence and that painful, hateful rhetoric than anything else.
Well, on that note, you ended up in office. So take me from the
shitstorm that was my first year in politics. Let's do that.
Shitstorm. Let's get actually before the shitstorm, the part where you were super inspired and dreamy-eyed and honeymoon period of your life. Go back to that period of which you were like, oh my gosh, I have stars in my eyes and this is what I want to go after.
Okay, let me be clear. I hate politics.
Okay, good.
I hate everything about it. It's mean, it's cut and thrust, but I believe that it's the only way to make a difference. And so I never grew up thinking about or dreaming about politics. I was going to be a teacher,
That was your dream.
Yeah, it's the most noble profession, and I believe deeply in the power of an education and the power of a good educator. I've been very blessed to have those influences in my life. So my interest in politics actually grew, probably I went to Trent University, that helped. I would find myself on Monday nights at the council chamber. And back when Twitter was fun and kind and a place... Twitter and a place where you built community and you could crowdsource ideas and it was fun and you could, live tweet an entire, Othello production and people would tune in, or Shawshank Redemptions, which I once did.
You did?
And people followed on. I didn't get hate back then. I think very few of us did, but I would live tweet the proceedings in council because I was interested. How do they make decisions? And I wanted to inform the community and I had time. So my interest grew from the process then, and then they tried to cut our buses. And then they were making decisions about homelessness.
What do you mean tried to
and
cut
how
your buses?
So
Yeah.
I was raised by a single mom, and I've had a job since I was 12. And almost all the jobs I had required me to take public transit. And at one point, we had a council in place that was going to cut buses on Sundays in Peterborough. As a student working part-time, and Saturdays and Sundays were the days where I could have hours and actually make money to support myself in whatever way. So I got really angry when people who'd never been on a bus were making decisions about the bus system. When people who'd never been to the grocery store and wanted to swipe their card and didn't know if it was going to be declined or not were making decisions about affordability.
Today, people who have never had a period making decisions about our bodies.
Or people who've never had a job running for the top job
that's so
in
interesting.
Canada.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So
Proceed.
that got to me. And, I was involved in various political campaigns for progressive teams. And, eventually people started asking me to run. And I think it took 14 people who asked me to run before I decided to run.
And they were asking you to, I want to be super specific here. They were asking you to run for?
At the time, it was for mayor of Peterborough.
Okay. And for those of you listening, Peterborough is a city.
Is a great city.
Great city in Ontario. What, like an hour and a half from Toronto?
Where we are right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless Neil Morton's driving. he drives the speed limit, but sometimes you get here faster. Somehow you get here faster with Neil driving. Then Christy helps.
Fair enough. They're actually in the studio here today, so they're rolling their eyes right now.
They are. That's what good friends are for.
Okay, so you're going to you're being asked to run for mayor.
Because nobody else wants to put their hand up.
Now, at the time, is there a female mayor in office? Has there ever been a female
only
mayor?
Had one at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm 29 years old, and I'm working my phones and contacts to find someone to run so that the incumbent doesn't run uncontested. And no one wants to do it. And then finally I realized, I guess it's me. And I decide to talk to 150 people before I do it.
That's your number?
That was my number.
Okay,
and
your number is 150 people.
It's
I'm going to talk to them.
Is this a good idea? Is this bad for me? Any advice? And of the 150 people I talk to, the majority say, do it. Go for it, girl. We've got your back. We'll knock doors for you. We'll raise money for you. We'll volunteer for you. Your breath of fresh air. You've got this. And then maybe like 8 to 10% say, aren't you a little too young for the job? The minimum age is 18. Shouldn't you get a little more education first? Shouldn't you run for a lower position first? How are you going to get the money? He's going to blow you out of the water. How are you going to walk into that room and earn the respect of all those men? You're going to knock on people's doors asking for their votes.
Were there women or men?
Oh, yes.
That said that?
All of the above.
All of the
Yeah.
above.
And you're going to knock on their doors, and they're going to be really nice to you, to your face, but as you're leaving, they're going to say, she's nice, but she's a Muslim. And that few conversations that were so discouraging had me change my mind 4 times about running. I almost didn't run. Because like all those things were legit. Those are all reasons to be afraid. Those are all reasons not to do it.
What did your mom say?
It surprises me still to this day how supportive she is about these big risks I take. And it shouldn't surprise me because she took the biggest risk of all.
risks. But when she took risks, though there were some rewards, she also has life experience. And sometimes that, as a parent, we don't want our kids to hurt, and we don't want them to struggle, and we don't want them to walk into a fire, even though we did ourselves. I'm like that myself. So you expected her to project.
Yeah, and even in this recent election, she's like, you should run. I'm like, Mom, I'm in school. I'm running a business. I have a toddler. It's a lot. And no, I think for her too, like she's given up a lot of dreams.
So you run or you do not?
I put my name on a ballot, and we run one hell of a campaign. And I lose by about 1,300 votes.
Way.
But it doesn't feel like a loss. And a few days later, leaders of progressive parties are calling me to run for their federal campaign coming up, and I end up running with the Liberals, and I get elected, and it's like 10:36, and the numbers have been called, and we've won, and I'm sitting there stunned. I'm like, okay, so what just happened? We won.
Excuse my ignorance too, because I moved at 18 years old to Nashville, Tennessee, in the South. So
We miss you.
Yeah, I miss Canada, especially right now. But I don't know as much about Canadian politics as I should, because I am completely everyday enthralled and in the middle of American politics. My friend actually ran for the governor. He's liberal. He ran for the governor of Tennessee a couple of years ago, knowing he would lose because we are a red state. And I can talk circles around a lot of things there, but then I come here and it's run so differently, and I'm really trying to educate myself. So you run, you lose the race by about just over 1,000 votes. And then how does it come to be here in Canada where you just get elected? The party just nominates you, or the party
No, so I've been in 5 elections, and the toughest race for me was the nomination race.
Got it. Okay.
To be the one carrying the Liberal flag and to be the Liberal candidate on the ballot. That was the toughest.
Had they ever had a woman or an Afghan woman? No?
No, I'm unfortunately still the first and only Afghan in parliament.
Still today?
Yes, but we have a candidate running this election in the federal race, and I really hope that she does well. But despite many great women running to be member of parliament of Peterborough in the past, Peterborough had not ever elected a woman for the job, and I became the first.
What does that look like? Because this is the beginning of what I call your shit stick of life story.
Really? Because for most people, they're like, oh, cool, so many
super cool
glass ceilings broken. You go, girl. It's smooth sailing from here, no?
Not anything nearly as cool as what you've been through, but anytime I'm telling my story and I say, at 18, I moved to Nashville and I had $300 to my pocket and I got a record deal, and they're like, amazing. I was like, and I'm signed to Disney. And they're like, that's so cool. And I was like, that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
So though it wasn't the beginning of the end, and you did way far cooler, more impactful things than I ever did.
Don't say that.
Well, I just mean, in pushing the pendulum forward, but explain to me exactly what your role is in government during this time.
Okay, so as a member of parliament, your job is to represent about 100,000, 120,000 constituents of yours, people who live in your community, to be their voice in Ottawa, to advocate for dollars to be flown to your riding, the constituency. You call it the district, I think.
Yes.
To make sure that the voice of the community on issues that matter, whether it's climate change or housing or women's issues, whatever it is, are reflected in government's decisions and policies and programs. I was additionally given the job of being a cabinet minister. So yes, I was a member of parliament, but I was also the minister responsible for what was a hot potato file at the time. So,
which was what?
Democratic reform.
Okay,
So
explain.
my job was on day 29. I'm pretty sure it was day 29 as brand new MP, brand new cabinet minister, was to introduce a new way for us to appoint senators.
A new way to appoint senators.
So that it's more merit-based and not just based on partisan. This guy, did a solid for me, so I'm going to put him in the cabinet. And now,
and is DEI a part of that process in any way?
Sort of, but you got to be sure to include merit and DEI. The two go hand in hand. They're not separate. In fact, a lot
they always should go hand in hand.
In fact,
yes.
For the first time in Canada's history, we have gender balance in our Senate because of that. And it's not because in the history of Canada, there have never been enough qualified women to fill that chamber. It's because there have been so many barriers put in the way. So DEI stuff is about making sure that those check points that people, check off, the identity markers, you recognize that people don't get appointed because of the different identity markers they get checked off. They're there despite them.
You know,
they've overcome hardships.
I love that. I'm currently filming a show called Life is Messy right now.
Life is messy.
Life is
Always.
damn messy.
It gets messier the more you know, it feels.
But when we were going over all of the crew choices, we had the sound person open. And I said, we know a lot of sound people. And one of the producers said, well, yes, but we're trying to find a woman, specifically an Asian woman, or somebody of color to fulfill this role because we feel like there aren't enough people that are given opportunities. And my assistant, who grew up in the South, was on the call. And when we got off, she said, I've never heard a conversation like that had in my entire life. And we took a second because, she grew up in Alabama, went to Bama, very Southern community, Southern driven, and she had never heard a conversation like that about job placement as it related to DEI and somebody who was fit for the job.
Yeah. You're not going to find someone who sucks at their job only to check off a box.
Exactly.
You're going to bring somebody on board who's going to change the way you think about, do things. You're going to bring someone who's going to open you up to a whole new audience, and someone who's going to hustle really hard for you because, unfortunately, if you're in a place that's not traditionally welcomed you or people like you before, you have to work that much harder to prove that you are there because of your qualifications and skills.
So now you're in office, and are you doing just that? Do you feel at this point that you are having to work twice as hard?
Oh, that's just the way that it is, yes. And someday it won't be.
Do you feel regret over it?
Oh,
or do you feel
at the
like
time?
Yeah, at the time.
Oh, yeah, there were days when it was that first year was the hardest because I went in thinking everybody wants to work together and get shit done. And no, actually, some people want to make sure you don't get things done so that you don't get credit for it, even if they stand to gain from it. And I learned a lot of hard lessons the hard way. There'd never been anybody like me in that place. And so, the standards that apply to a maler, whiter version of me don't apply to me the same way. I could say the exact same thing that a maler, whiter version of me would say, and the words coming out of my mouth would be perceived very differently than the
Nothing's
mailer,
changed. That's still
whiter version.
like
so
that
I learned
today.
all this the hard way. I also don't know how politics works. There's no book actually that says, here's how to be an effective cabinet minister. I learned the very hard way that institutions that are not designed for people like me, in fact, designed to keep people like me out, are going to push us out in macro and micro ways every day. So yeah, there were days when I didn't want to get out of bed.
When you were in office, when you go back to the time, did you have an ally back then that you would like to give a shout out to?
Oh my God, I had so many. I wouldn't still be standing and talking about politics. The late, great Jim Carr was my seatmate in the House of Commons. And he had my back. Omar Al-Ghabra, who's just, retiring from politics, he was there. I have this whole kitchen cabinet of lovely humans from, Jonathan Bennett to Lynn Zimmer, who at any time of the night or day would take my calls and give good advice, would just listen and make soothing sounds. And I've got two sisters, and anybody who has sisters, they're your ride or dies. And Lauren Hunter, who of course ran the thing with me, and Andy Mitchell, there's hundreds, if not thousands of people whose efforts and care have kept me whole throughout the years.
And wouldn't you also consider those people the change makers? The people that support the brave individuals that want to make a stand?
The lone nuts who stand up. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's your village. Nobody gets anything done alone. You know that. And I guess Neil Morton was somewhat helpful too. He's in the studio right now. And you really realize in those isolated, rock bottom moments who your real friends are, who's got your back, who just wants you to succeed because they care about you, not because they need something from you. And if you're very lucky, you have a lot of people like that in your life.
So I agree. So did I
even answer your question?
You did.
I feel like
you
we
absolutely
went to
did
8
answer the
different
question.
chapters
No,
of life.
this is amazing.
Okay.
So you're now in 2021.
Yeah.
Is this I know a little bit about this time and I want to hear it in your own words, but would you consider this one of the darkest times in your life?
Okay, so yeah, for sure. For
Okay,
a
so
number
tell
of
us
reasons.
what happened.
So we're in a pandemic, and it's probably, I hope it's the worst thing that most of us will ever experience in our lifetimes. And in addition to, being at home and working from home and maybe realizing that I don't have some of the healthiest relationships and most positive influences in my life very, very close to me. The work is harder. People are hurting. People are afraid. And, the pandemic is taking control of our lives. There's uncertainty and fear and things that we thought were going to be there forever suddenly aren't. So it's a tough time to be. It's a tough time to lead. It's just tough for so many reasons. And, one of the things that's happening behind the scenes, I'm hearing from women in Afghanistan who say there's a peace deal being negotiated and we're not at the table, but the Taliban are, and they have harmed us and they will harm us some more. We need to be at the table. We don't even have a contact person to reach out to and say we want to be part of this. So I start having conversations with Afghan diaspora in Canada, in the US, but also with Afghan women in Afghanistan. And it very quickly becomes clear that something really horrible is about to happen. We need to hear these women out. So for about 5 months.
Okay, and I want to pause for a second because you said we need to hear these women out. And I want people who are listening to understand this. So how do I say this without sounding completely... Why do we need to, because I know why, but why, in your words, do you feel we need to hear people out when the naysayers are saying, hey, you work for Canada. You're here in Canada. You should care about Canadians. So why should we hear people out over there?
Well, the whole reason we went to Afghanistan was because we saw very clearly what happens in Afghanistan affects us in our homes, in our workplaces, on our borders. It was 9/11 that was the reason we even went to Afghanistan and said, oh my gosh, what's happening to the women is awful. Let's give you freedom. Let's give you your rights. Let's give you your education. And for 20 years, the international community did a great job at lifting up women and showing little girls and boys what women could do. And while it wasn't perfect, far from it, women were rocking it. And those same women were sounding the alarm, and we didn't listen to them. They told us a hasty withdrawal would be catastrophic. We didn't believe them. They told us they want to be part of the negotiations because the peace agreement would be stronger and better, as research shows, when women are involved.
And we didn't listen.
Didn't listen. And what was the outcome? Remember those planes flying with people hanging on and falling from the sky? Remember the images of the Kabul airport with people lining up? I'd have people, young women particularly, calling me at all hours of the night. I don't know how they got my cell phone number. I think a lot of people working in government did at the time get those calls. I remember a young woman called me one night. It was like 3 or 5 in the morning. I don't fully recall. And she said, hey, I'm so-and-so. I was in line waiting to get inside the airport. The Taliban beat me up. So I'm now hiding behind a brown car at such and such petrol station. Can somebody come and get me? And my job, like so many others, was to let her know that no one was coming.
Yeah.
And that is rock bottom. At that point in my career, I realized how little power I had. Even though I was the only Afghan in government, I think I was the only Afghan in cabinet in the G7. I was getting calls from all over the world coming into my constituency office saying, can you give us direction? Can you give us guidance?
And you felt powerless.
It's the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah. So this is why.
This is why.
This is why. Okay. Let's go back to it. So it's 2021 and everything's going on. You are hearing these women out again, or you are attempting to?
I am not only hearing these women out. So I'm working until like 10 o'clock at night on my day job. And then until 3 a.m. I'm working on this, having calls, different time zones, all that. And I'm given the green light by the PM to go talk to people, the White House, the people at the UN, our own folks, people in different countries who care about women in Afghanistan, and to come back to them with a solution. And it becomes very clear to me early on that like no one is really prepared for what's about to happen. And you fast forward, several weeks, and I've got two screens open. One of them is showing the president of Afghanistan getting on a plane. And by the way, the proper way to pronounce it is Afghanistan.
Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we see the president of Afghanistan getting on a plane and leaving. And then we see the Prime Minister of Canada, my Prime Minister, going in and calling an election. And I leave the house that day and I go outside and I need to film a video that says, election time, make your voice heard. And for the first time in my political experience, no one's smiling at me when they see me outside. No one comes up and, shakes my hand and says, congratulations, I wish you all the best. You've got our support. No one wants this election. People have just been through hell. And that day I knew in my gut that I'd lost the election.
Who were you running against?
She's a social media influencer and she won. And, she's doing a great job in many ways, communicating, which is something I didn't do well. She's a great self-promoter, which I encourage all women to do. No one wakes up in the morning and thinks about you except for you. So humble brag.
I'm just going to stop you right now.
Okay.
This is what makes you so freaking cool.
Oh.
Okay. I just asked you, about the person that you lost to. And the very first thing that you're doing is lifting her up.
Let me be clear. She's against childcare.
That's not good. There are lots of things that she probably doesn't do well. I'm going to say it right now. But the things that she is doing well, you immediately focused in on that, which I just have to say, woman to woman is amazing.
Yeah. Okay? Mean girls are not going to help our cause.
Let that be the name of the episode. Mean girls are not going to help the cause.
Okay.
Okay.
But don't mess with my childcare. It's the only reason I have a livelihood.
Okay.
I will fight for my childcare like
as you should.
Generations of women before me have.
As you should. Okay. Keep going.
Okay. So I've lost heart at this point because I've got power. I've got a seat in parliament and these folks calling me, these women calling me, they can't count on me. I don't think I'm going to win this election. And so I just lose heart. And I think a big part of your show is, you can climb any mountain. You can go through anything in life as long as you believe deep in yourself that I'm going to get through this. And what's on the other side of this is better. That I'm fighting the right fight, that I'm, walking a line with my North Star. But the minute you lose that belief, though, and then you go into, well, what's the point? What am I even doing? Am I still me? Do I even like me anymore? The minute you go into that place, you've lost.
Is that where you were?
Very much so. And then there was a day when I was like, it was the day that we were announcing that, whatever safety parameters were in place to allow people to get on planes and to get out. This was the last day that people actually could leave from Afghanistan.
Okay.
So this was the worst
right
day.
This time.
You rock, yeah.
So this is the same day.
This is the worst day. This is the worst day of all. And remember, I haven't slept. I'm angry. I'm heartbroken. And it's loss upon loss. So there's this press conference, daily. I think it was almost daily briefing at that time where, I don't have any power over this file. I'm the women's minister. I'm the rural economic development minister. And my job is to protect Canada's women and to make sure everybody has access to high-speed internet. But I'm there because I'm an Afghan, and I'm there because it'd be awful for me to not be there. There would be Afghans saying, where were you? So I'm on this press conference and I'm thinking about the women who are calling me, the women who are stuck, the little girls and boys, and what's going to happen to this country that the international community has given up so much for. And in that moment, I forget that I'm a politician. I forget that I'm in the middle of a very toxic election campaign. That all is so distant from me. I tried to speak in a last-ditch attempt to the humanity of these terrorists who are holding these women hostage. And I appeal to their humanity in a way that a Muslim would, saying brother to sister, we're all part of the same fabric of, humanity. And I try to speak to that. And I say to them, we ask our brothers to let the women go. And
And you use the word brothers. I read about this.
And then it blows up and it becomes this thing where me, who's been, and family members who've been victims of these men, who's devoted her life to women's rights, suddenly I'm the villain.
You are the villain because you use the word brothers.
It doesn't make any sense, and we don't even know how to respond to it. And maybe if I could go back, I would use different words. But here I am trying to save lives. And then that was it. That was it.
You threw your hands up for
and
him.
somebody put up a really awful billboard that then they immediately took down. And I just in that moment was like, what is the point? So that was rock bottom.
Everyone has a weight limit. Everyone and everything has a weight limit. And when you reach yours, you break. That was your breaking point.
Yeah. And I come from a long line of resilient women like you.
You can be resilient. You can still break, though.
You run out of resilience.
You run out of resilience. Right? Temporarily, hopefully, but you run out of resilience. I started this entire podcast with my moment where I am resilient. I am a powerhouse. I do all of these things, but I had my moment where I was in the backseat of a car and I wasn't sure I wanted to do it anymore. So I understand.
Do people know about the backseat of the car?
They do, because I decided that with this podcast, if I was going to have people share their most vulnerable moments with me, I also had to share mine. So I started the podcast with mine, which was I could never have dreamed that it would have ever led me to the backseat of a car where I didn't want to live anymore. But I'm here to tell my story. And my shit stick of life story didn't end there. It was a lesson in resilience. It was a lesson in next chapters. So from, the ashes of whatever that was. Catastrophe. How did you rebuild and what are you doing now?
Well, first of all, I'm really glad you're still here.
Thank you.
And you've been very courageous to use your personal story to help others feel like they're not alone. I think it's a big reason why you're very successful in what you're doing. So keep it up.
Thank you.
And like you, I built a business out of the ashes of the disaster. That was that last chapter in life. And I made 100 calls.
100 this time. We decreased from 150.
I don't know what you did, but I was fortunate to be able to do like an eat, pray, love thing where I lost the election and it was horrible and it was awful. And then I went away and I got to stay away and I didn't talk to anybody for a couple of weeks. And
where did you go?
I went to Barbados.
Oh, love it. Okay.
They were so nice to me. And there's
you ate your way through Barbados?
I swam a lot.
Okay.
I just floated in the beaches. I slept a lot because my nervous system was out of whack and I had not slept forever. Yeah. And I spent a lot of time on the prayer mat and on the yoga mat. And I spoke with my therapist and my coach. And, I reevaluated life and realigned. And after I was ready to talk to people, I called 100 people, and these were lovely people who took the time to take my call. And one of them said, look, your struggles as a leader in government were as big as they were because you didn't have the kind of guidance that could have helped you prevent what was preventable and to protect you from what you could have been protected from. So what if you went in and filled those gaps with leaders who are doing the things you believe in? And Laura gave me this advice, and I'll forever be grateful for her because that's how Onward was born. And that's what I do now, whether it's one-on-one with CEOs or in small groups of 8 or in big rooms. So you started
a company called Onward.
This is what I do now.
And you are a speaker and you advocate. And people can hire you to maybe come into their companies or their corporations. Can they do that as well?
Yeah.
Okay, what else?
And I do one-on-one advising for CEOs. I do team development for teams who are, maybe they want to do government relations. Maybe they want to tell their story better. Maybe they're trying to retain very talented staff and I go in and support them with that. Maybe they've got a, chunky, troubling issue they want to navigate. I'm there for that. But I get to work with leaders I believe in, and I get to help shape their decisions, and I get to help teach them my mistakes so that they have room to make their own.
God, I love that.
I do too. It's
good
the most joy I've ever had in life working, and I've had a job since I was 12.
You've had a job since you're 12, and you've become a mother. since all of that?
The toughest job. Okay, how do women do it with more than one kid? And how do women do it with more than one kid and
Amnesia.
work?
I have a theory. Okay, so after I had my first jet, I was sitting in a car with my then ex-husband or then husband, and he was pumping the gas, and Jet was in the back and he was sleeping, and I turned around and there was a mother with 5 children in her car.
How?
And I thought I'm being serious. She must be crazy. She must be insane to do this 5 times.
Yeah.
But then I realized it was sleep deprivation.
Okay.
So that helps.
And they're so freaking cute.
And they're so freaking cute, but amnesia. Basically, I think we just absolutely forget, that period of our lives. Even though it's beautiful, it's hard.
It's hard. And if you don't have supports, it's unbearable. And so when I say I'm fighting for childcare and elder care and for women to have decent jobs that support them, it's because of that. Because we lose out so much when we don't support mothers.
Well, I have about 10 questions I want to ask you that are quicker questions. But before I do,
you want to do like a rapid fire round?
It's kind of rapid fire.
Okay, let's
and
do
some
it.
of them are more, but I'm going to get to that in a second. Before I do, I want to ask you about how you feel about the climate of the U.S. right now and Canada.
Okay. America.
Get your bleepity bleep together.
Americans, we love you. You're our closest friends and allies. Canadians have fought with you, died with you, employed you. We've benefited from this long-standing arrangement. What's going on?
Yeah.
Let's put this madness to an end.
Yeah.
It's not going to help. And actually, the most vulnerable on both sides of our borders are going to feel it most.
Yeah. What a crazy, sad time. I was reading the other day, somebody sent me an article about a bill that was passed they're trying to pass, my apologies, in South Carolina, I think. Don't quote me on this. Making women criminally liable if they have a miscarriage, if they can prove that they are responsible for the miscarriage in some way. And responsibility would lie like horseback riding, traveling while pregnant. And I legit was like, we are living the Handmaid's Tale right now.
Written by a Canadian.
Yes, written by a Canadian. Yeah.
Do you want me to comment on that or just cry about it? Because I want to cry. Honestly, there's so many days where I see a version of myself just crying. And I don't have time to be that version. So I just keep pushing through because this is part of the pushback, right? Like American women, you are beacons of hope for women everywhere. And
what can we do?
What can you do?
The people out there, the women out there that veer as far away from politics as possible and don't want to talk about it. What do you have to say to them right now? What can we do? What are simple things that we can all do?
If you can't do anything political because it's just not your thing, be kind and support those who are. And just be kind to one another, even if you're not politically engaged. Start talking about
Have the conversation.
Just talk about it. Just talk about it. That in itself is significant. If you have the time, write a quick letter or an email to your representative. Hey, I support this or I don't support this. Because in my constituency office, if we got a handful of calls about an issue, it became a thing. And then if every representative out there is getting a handful of calls or whatever.
I think we feel discouraged by, doing that in the U.S. And I would even say I have felt discouraged because I used to be the letter writer. I would be the person that would, copy and paste the letter for other people to just, to make it easier for them. And it feels for sure, like during this time, that there's a loss of control and even being heard in our voice.
Women of America, the women of Canada are with you. I've seen legislatures like in Manitoba, stand up in solidarity with you, reach out beyond your borders. There's a reason why, the world is watching you. You're the most powerful women in the world. We are counting on you. So reach out beyond your borders. If you can't write to your representatives, then post something on social media. If you don't want to post on social media because the trolls are going to come after you.
I think we're scared. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. I used to go to the rallies for better gun control. And a few years ago, there was nine people that died 5 minutes from our house at a school while my kids were on lockdown. And shortly after that, somebody, at a gun rally, a car drove in to the rally. And a certain individual decided that this person had just as many rights protesting as the people that were peacefully protesting. And I thought, oh my goodness, we're putting our lives in danger. And we just, what are we doing? How do we make a difference when it feels like nobody's listening? I'm not dead inside yet, but man, today it's a tough time right now.
So I did a few speaking engagements around Women's Day this year to corporations that have a foothold in Canada and US. And my advice to women in those gatherings and our allies, those who care about us, was this. Like the women who've come before us, we've got to play the long game. Maybe we're in a point in time when we got to do more to create inclusion and empathy and welcoming and belonging, more of the doing and less of the talking. Maybe we're at a point in our lives and in our history when we got to recharge our batteries and build our resilience and just take a deep breath and get ready for what's ahead. Because if these tariffs and, the decisions beyond the Canada-US piece are going to stick, we're going to have a much bigger battle ahead of us than what's in front of us right now. So recharge those batteries. And when I say we don't have time or room for mean girls, I mean it.
Can you be my speed dial, girl? Can you be on my speed dial?
I got you, girl.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay, I have 10 questions for you. Are you ready?
Okay.
It's actually 11. I added 11.
Actually?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm calling it 10, but it's really 11. Okay. And some of them are easy.
This is lightning round. I'm sure they're all super easy. Totally.
Common misconception about politics.
That it's not worth it.
Love it. Your go-to stress reliever.
It used to be sleep.
Now you got a child, so throw that out the window.
When I feel depressed or discouraged, I bring a group of great women and those who care about us together, and that fills my cup right up.
Girls' night.
No, like actual events. Let's talk business.
Oh, okay. Let's.
No, my nights are for my son.
I want to come.
You're invited.
Okay. If not politics or advocacy or onward, what career would you choose?
Teaching.
Teaching. I knew you were going to say that. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Ooh, you get so much advice when you're in government and when you're in leadership. Maybe for those who are thinking about running politically, two things. One, whether they love you or hate you, it's not about you, it's about them. You're reminding them of something in themselves, not about you. And two, if you're going to run, which I encourage you to do, run a credible campaign. Even if you think you have no hope in hell, run a good campaign so that other doors open up for you.
I love that. One law you wish you could pass instantly.
Okay. One law. Well, the laws are there. Every woman and child deserves to live free of violence and abuse. But maybe if I could go like this and put a law in place that would give greater teeth to that fundamental human right, that would be it. Because if you don't have safety and security, it's going to be really hard to make the most of your life otherwise.
Love that. Favorite book or movie?
Ooh. So I have read The Alchemist a gajillion times. And I keep going back to it.
One habit that keeps you grounded?
I'm telling you, it's bringing good people together.
Okay.
Whether it's for team social, which we did at the Only Cafe a few nights ago, whether it's events at places like the Market Hall in Peterborough that bring professionals together for, the bonding and the heart-to-heart and the professional development.
You also said you do yoga.
Yeah, not as much as I should, though, lately.
One guilty pleasure?
One guilty pleasure. I have so many. Honestly, in Canada, it's CPAC. I know it's different for you in America. It's a different thing.
Guilty pleasure?
CPAC is the political channel in Canada.
I was thinking like Housewives of New Jersey, okay? Not CPAC. Okay, fine.
I watch it because it's fun, but you want a show, I will think of one.
Let's do it.
I just finished watching Scandal.
Okay, I haven't seen Scandal
Kerry
yet.
Washington,
I
you
love.
rock. Watch
yes,
it.
I actually haven't seen that.
Do it.
Have you seen Shrinking? That's the one I just finished. Watch Shrinking. If you liked Ted Lasso, you'll love Shrinking.
I
Just
do
watch
love Ted Lasso.
Shrinking. One piece of advice for your younger self.
The things that hurt the most are going to be the things that give you the biggest strength in what's coming next.
I love that, because through this podcast, I say everyone gets hit by something. That's where all the good stuff is. That's where the stories are. That's where the lessons are.
Yeah.
Nobody leads the perfect life.
It'd be nice to like get a break in between, so you
Well,
don't
I mean, I'd love
always
a
have
yacht,
to be
but-
strong and I would just love sleep and like a little bit of boring. But a yacht is nice too. I haven't thought about that.
Okay, number 10, most memorable career moment.
The most memorable moment at the beginning of the pandemic, I spent 48 hours not knowing what my job was going to be. What do we do when you suddenly can't go into the office or talk to people, and the technology to have phone calls and, Zoom meetings aren't even really there? And I waited. The team said, "Minister, we'll get back to you." I waited, and I didn't get a call back. I got restless, and I picked up the phone and I called leaders across the country, and I said, "What's my job right now?" And they all said the same thing, that women and children are going to be trapped with the most dangerous people in their lives. And you better make sure that those centers that can help them have the cleaning supplies and the PPEs and the paid staff to keep their lights on so that they can piece back what was broken. And those calls then led to me having the courage to say to Prime Minister Trudeau, "Prime Minister, not every home is a safe home," at the end of that first full cabinet meeting when the pandemic was declared. And 48 hours later, he and the finance minister are standing there, in addition to a bunch of other supports, saying we're going to put forward $50 million so that women's organizations can have the supports they need. That number grew to over $200 million. And in that first year of the pandemic, 1 million women and children had access to services in their darkest hour. And that's probably my proudest moment in government.
By asking the question.
By picking up the phone.
By picking up the phone.
I don't know what my job is right now.
You were able to likely save and keep safe many women and children.
And remember what you said earlier, is the people who took my call and gave me the advice. They deserve that credit.
Last and final question, the most important, of course, one song that pumps you up. Miriam, if you suggest, it's got to be
anything Shania Twain.
Okay, I'll take Shania Twain.
Nashville? Come on.
I'll take Shania Twain.
What were you going to say? What were you going to judge me for?
I was expecting some, deep song or something. I was like, no. It's got to be something like a no-brainer.
No,
but
it's Shania Twain. And
okay.
Recently there's Call My Power Back.
I love it.
The anthem.
Oh, wait, that's a new song of hers?
Yeah, and then no, that's not Shania Twain. That's
the
and
anthem.
then, All Day, Every Day.
Are you going to sing?
No, I should not sing. I will lose fans if I sing. Can I ask you what next, or can I?
You can ask me what next. You can do whatever you want.
Okay, so we're in this nightmare, an unbelievable story in Canada, U.S. What's your best advice to Canadians, particularly Canadian women, at this time?
Oh, that is a really tough question. But right now, I have a lot of friends who admire Canada and the moves that y'all are making to protect your country, because we also see it as you protecting us. In fact, I would even venture to say that we think you are doing a better job at protecting us than we are within our own country. And you're giving us the support that we need to do just that, right? To rise up and support the organizations that care about us. So keep doing what you're doing, Canadian women. Please also, reach out to your fellow Americans, specifically women, because I know people like me are struggling. And when the fact that I'm living here in Canada for a couple of months and I'm hearing about it all the time, it's a different thing living it. My daughter is sitting here in the background, and I fear for her as a woman. I fear for her based on the color of her skin. She had a little friend over the other day, and we were going out to Walmart, and she said, her little friend, who I will not say her name, said, "Miss Kortney, I can't go right now because I don't have my passport on me." And she was worried because she had been stopped before, and she should be worried about going out right now. She shouldn't be, but she is, because it's a real thing. So living it is a completely different story. And I think because media isn't able to cover it the way that they once were, we're not getting the full story out there. So thank you very much for asking me that. I love Canada. Canada is where I was born, and it will always be the place of which I call home, despite having lived 27, 28 years now in the South. But I do love my fellow Americans too. And I think that's really important. You know, we're all struggling. So, Maryam Monsef, you are a delight. And I just couldn't be more grateful that you made the trek into Toronto today to have a little chat with me.
Thank you, Kortney, with a
Thank
K.
you.
It's been a pleasure.